All right. Well, I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Deliberate Orthodoxy podcast. I'm making this little intro video to my interview with Cole, just to let you know that this is part one of two in an interview series that I did with Cole. The first video that you're going to be watching is more focused on Cole's ministry, who he is, his background, and then certainly the base 1520 ministry, which is so interesting. And that's, of course, in the title. You see about the Green Berets and those things. And he'll explain all those things. And so it's a great conversation with a great man. And so I know you're looking forward to it. I would like to just invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. I think right now we were at the time of my recording, we're at 1,797 followers. It sure would be nice to go over that 1,800 mark. So I know a lot of you who watch this are not subscribed. It won't cost you anything, but we would sure appreciate it if you would do that. Well, God bless you, and enjoy the interview. Well, certainly it's great to be here with you today on the Deliberate Orthodoxy podcast. However you're receiving this, whether it be through YouTube or whether you're listening to it on Spotify, I am blessed today to be able to have a friend with me that I think will be embarking on a little ministry adventure here in a few months. And so I'm looking forward to that. But I do want to introduce Cole Permenter to you. And certainly I know many of you at Emmanuel might know him. He's from this area. I'm not going to get into that too much. I'm going to leave that for him. And so, Cole, as we get started today, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us about your family, and where you currently serve.
Yeah, so my name's Cole Permenter, obviously, right? Right now, we are currently serving at Bluff Creek Baptist Church, which is in Clinton, Louisiana, so just north of Zachary, just north of Baton Rouge. But I am from Ruston. I grew up in Arcadia, went to high school at Cedar Creek, and then finished my degree undergrad at Louisiana Tech, and then moved to New Orleans Baptist, and there got my master's, met my wife, and we moved to Zachary, and then somehow ended up in Bluff Creek.
At Bluff Creek. All right, yes. Bluff Creek Baptist Church.
So we have two little girls, Hudson and Nola, and they're 8 and 6, and they are awesome. They are inspiring.
I'm sure they are. At that age, they inspire a lot of things. I can promise you. I can remember well. Probably inspire a little bit of fatigue from time to time.
Very much so.
There you go. Well, yeah, I missed you last year. You were here at Emmanuel. I say last year, this year. Earlier in the spring, you were here at Emmanuel for a kind of a Disciple Now sort of weekend here. And I wasn't fleeing the country or anything like that, but I did go down to Mexico that weekend. And so I missed you. I was down there for a niece's wedding, and it wasn't a destination wedding. I mean, she was literally marrying a guy from there. And with the current visa restrictions, he was unable to come here for a wedding. And so we went down there and anyway, just heard great things, and that our youth students really enjoyed having you here, and our church family did as well. And so I'm really excited about reconnecting with you, not just here, but certainly as we get to do a little bit of ministry together. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds great. Yeah, I had a great time, and I got to bring Ricky. I never get to see my wife in that context of just ministering to others. She's a counselor, so I never get to see that. It was just really great to see her in her element, and I appreciate Chaz for letting us do that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it was a good time, and my two of my children were here for that, and they did enjoy it, greatly. It's really edifying and encouraging for them. And so, just as our folks get to know you, and certainly as we're going to get to the ministry experience or the ministry cooperation that we're going to be taking part in here in just a little while, but I just want our folks to get to know you maybe a little bit better. You're involved in a couple of ministries. You have some kind of diverse interest. Can you share just a little bit about the ministry training that you do? Share a little bit about that and kind of, how folks might get involved in that, or what some of those things are.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started it is a ministry, but it's a business called Base 1520. And the 1520 stems from Romans 15:20. Paul says, I make it my ambition to preach the gospel to those who have never heard it. And so it all kind of started around this idea of a few years back. I was preaching through the book of Acts, and you get to Acts 13, and you see this story where Paul, John Mark, and Barnabas, they land in Pamphylia, Phrygia, and they're going to Antioch Pisidia, and this is where John Mark parts ways. And so you don't even see it in the verse. You need to know the context. But in one verse, they go 100 miles over the Taurus mountain range just to take the gospel to Antioch Pisidia, to people who have never heard the name of Jesus. And so I began thinking, like, man, could I make that trek? Right? Could people in my church make that trek? If people's souls depended upon it, could we do it? And I think the sad answer is no. Like, many of us can't. And so I began looking around, and I noticed that within the Christian realm, there are very few fitness programs, fitness ministries that have to do specifically with the Great Commission. And there's always be healthy, your body's a temple, and those type things. But with it specifically purposed for missions, there are very few. And so we said, man, there's a blind spot that we need to address within the church, and this needs to be it, because it really all starts with a theology of God gave us a body to glorify Him and to take the gospel from point A to point B. And so if our body is physically unable, then we are being terrible stewards of it. And so we then launched Base 1520 with the idea we want to work with sending agencies and missionaries and just physically and mentally optimize them to be the most effective in their ministry. And just as a pastor in general, and you know this as a marathon runner and just an athlete yourself.
Those are very loose. Those are very loose descriptors that you're using right there, Cole. I want you to understand that.
You literally just ran a race.
People can say they have run a marathon, but then to call someone a marathon runner, that's kind of a, I don't know if I can quite wear that label just because I finished one before.
You did it though.
Well,
so, but just as well as I do, right? So whenever you take care of yourself physically, everything else in your life, as far as your holistic health, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that's all intertwined. And so if one of those parts is off, right, like everything else suffers. And so I think one of the things that we do really well, especially in Southern Baptist, is theological education, spiritual disciplines. But when it comes to like the physical component, I think we're lacking. And I know just for me personally in ministry, like there have been times where when I've neglected the physical stewardship of my body, that my ministry suffered, my congregation suffered, my family suffered. And so that's where all of this started, with the idea of we want to just help ministers, missionaries, church members, and the Christian marketplace just be better stewards of their bodies.
Got you. Well, let's see. Yeah, make sure I still had you there for a minute. I kind of glitched out. But yeah, well, I mean, that's wonderful. And certainly now, as far as actually training missionaries or working with missionaries or mission sending agencies, I mean, how many folks have y'all been able to train? I know this is still kind of getting off the ground, you're, building.
Yeah, so we worked with a few different cohorts for the FPO or orientation with the IMB, in contact with several other sending agencies and trying to partner with them. And that whole premise came from, so my wife is a doctor of psychology from New Orleans Baptist, and she owns a private practice counseling center. And everybody she sees currently are either missionaries who are on the field or on furlough. And she has recognized this trend of burnout, attrition rate, PTSD, and just spending years on the back end of just doing just healing, mental healing for missionaries. And so we began asking the question, is there a way to do this on the front end that would, one, cause them to be more resilient, and two, save the IMB and other sending agencies just a lot of money. And so being better stewards of that. And so we then began looking around at like who are resilient. And I mean, you look no further than the special forces, right? The military has spent billions of dollars to perfect this, and they have. And so why would we not copy that or try to reinvent that? And so we bring missionaries in. We have a 90-day workup, or depending on the agency and what their pipeline looks like, but we run them through the psychological assessment, and then physiological. We're training them, we're preparing them, doing assessments throughout this 90-day period, and then at the end of that, they would come to us, and we have in person where essentially we try to break them in a very safe place so that they understand their triggers. We know exactly what their triggers are. We can push those buttons, and then once they are there, we break them in a safe place and then show them that they are able to go so much more further. And so God in his grace has provided Green Berets who are just excellent at what they do, and they come alongside, they run the course for us, and it's pretty incredible. Like watching these guys do what they do. They teach land nav, survival skills, but really just to be resilient. And it's awesome watching these guys in their element.
Well, I hope not. Maybe it might be good for me to kind of hide this video. I don't know if many of our folks, surrendering to missions. I mean, if they think they're going to be put through that sort of training, I don't know if they're going to be ready for that or not. But it's certainly having had family members that have served on the mission field and in some pretty isolated places, difficult, dark places. I can certainly understand, and just the culture shock, going overseas and being separated from family and in cultures that are so far removed from anything we could understand or really comprehend before we get there. Certainly could see that, and we've all read. We don't want our children and our relatives and our church members to have to go through the things that William Carey went through, on the mission field,
Right.
And his wife going insane, basically, and dying and all those things. And we're so thankful, especially as Southern Baptists with the IMB having such a huge safety net and such a network of helpers and mental health, professionals and physical health and all those things being such a clear thing. But obviously, if you can avoid those things, that's always best, So
one of the really cool things that we're trying to start and implement is like supplementation. Like one of the things that just people don't realize is when you go from the West to the East, your diet, your gut bacteria, all of that changes. And so you become nutritionally deficient without even realizing it. And that right there, like just if you're fatigued, you're tired, like everything else is affected. And so learning how to do individual blood work, and then identifying deficiencies, and then doing supplementation with that, just to optimize them in that regard. That little bit right there would make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Well, I know we could continue to pull this thread, all afternoon. And but I do want to get to kind of some of the things that you and I are involved in together. You're a man of many parts, and I will have to admit, I've got to say this right up front. I mean, you invited me to be a part of this ministry, or to kind of partner with you in South Asia this next year and do some training there. And in the midst of that, you also invited me to be a part of a high rocks race. And so anyway, I didn't take up that challenge. I didn't really know what that was until you told me about it. And I went and Googled it and watched a couple of YouTube videos. And I found out that getting ready for a half marathon doesn't quite compare to probably what's necessary for a high rocks. So.
No, you could absolutely do it. And in fact, I'm probably glad you're not doing it so that you don't beat me and then I have to hear about it.
Well, trust me, there was no danger of that. Absolutely no danger of that.
Yeah.
But
what's really cool though about like the high rocks races is that, man, they're international and they're all over the global scene, and so it gives us a great excuse to be in the country, and so we don't have to be deceptive about why we're there, and so we're there to run a race, and we're going to stay with friends when we do it.
There you go. That's right. Well, I'll be staying with the friends, I think, while it's going on. But anyway, I do appreciate the invite. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. So I'll have to do a little more lead up for that. Well, just in terms of the ministry that we're going to be a part of, and how you and I connected on that, we have a mutual friend, Jimmy Stafford. How did you get connected with Jimmy? How did you and Jimmy kind of come together, and how did you introduce him to the ministry there in South Asia?
So we at Bluff Creek are part of the William Wallace Association, which is a part of the Baisla Baptist Association of Southeast Louisiana. And so Franklinton, right, being a part of Baisla as well. A few years back, I taught, I'm an adjunct professor for New Orleans Baptist, and so I taught one of their certificate programs there, and I met a few guys there, and so I called. So Pastor Spurgeon was in town. I called and I was like, hey, would y'all like to meet with Pastor Spurgeon and we can just educate you on what we're trying to do, not necessarily wanting anything. And Brother Jimmy was at that meeting, and from there, man, he has been all in, like just all about it. And so he was able to come with me, which was super surprising to me that he was able to come 2 years ago. And man, I felt so sore. I felt so. It was a 17-hour plane ride, and he struggled on that. Once we got there, he was fine, but the travel part was pretty tough. But man, I was so glad. And then all he did was talk about how great Pastor Paul was.
Oh,
He goes, man, Paul would love this. Paul would love this. Paul would love this. And so that's how he then connected y'all, I think, with Pastor Spurgeon, and then I think you and I connected with that as well.